So welcome back to Layer by Layer. In the last episode we finished off the little flashcard container and I came out with a hint that our next project shall be involving this. So first of all, I think we need to explain what this is. So with every printer you get, you tend to also have a small little toolkit that comes with it. This just involves some simple things like some lubricant, some spare screws, parts for the legs, cleaning the nozzle head. But yeah, you just get a nice little plastic tray of all the tools you may need starting off. Now, you can see it's plasticky, finicky, and just mass produced, nothing too special about it. Now, there are online many designs of trays that have incorporated this into it, and I could just simply find one of those, print them out, and that would be my solutions all solved. But what's the point in that? I've got the printer, could try and design one myself. So I came up with this general sketch. Let me just move these. That. It's amazing, I know, you don't have to tell me. So all it basically is a toolbox. So in the bottom here is going to be a small drawer for all these looser parts that don't really have any sort of way of designing a little compartment for them. And then the top is going to be a small cavity here where something like this tray would be able to slot in the top, and it'd have all the little cutouts of all the tools. Now, of course, there are many options I could go for designing storage that has already been made. For instance, you've got Gridfinity or multi-board, but I decided to design my own, not a full system, but just a simple one for this. And probably wondering the reason why. Is it for skill? It's for vanity. I mean, it'd be amazing if you had to tell people that I did it all myself and didn't use any parametrics or anything. So it's all vanity. This is basically the entire modus operandi of this channel. Actually, it's just vanity, so nothing new there. Now, of course, I could just try and design something like this. I'm sure it would take me forever, and it would come out not as good as I could probably do it. So my plan is we are going to split this into 3 sections. So section 1 is going to be how to do a simple drawer that can be pulled out of just a simple box. So that way I can figure out how to do this area, the drawer section. Then section 2 is going to be how could I'm going to have to do this my way around, is how could I design a tray that I can slot in, because of course one of the things I want to think about is if I don't actually have the shapes hard designed into it and can just remove the top tray, then that means this could be used for many other use cases. So section 2 is going to be how to design sort of a part that could contain a tray that can be easily removed. And then section 3 is going to be how do I create, because I've seen these before, and it's basically how to create a print in place hinge for the lid. I didn't put the lid on this sketch, but how would I create a hinge for this? So by breaking this down to 3 distinct sections, it should hopefully make my life a lot easier, and it means I wouldn't be ended up printing the entire thing and say this drawer doesn't fit in properly, I've just wasted all that time printing one thing, when if I get the methodology of printing that down first, I feel like it would be a lot easier. And it's the whole methodology of breaking down your problems into smaller problems. So yeah. So first, we need to go and try and design the drawer. Okay, now that we're up in Fusion, let's start with the first thing I want to design, which is a drawer. So let's first get a basic design down. Okay, so this is the basic internal of the drawer. If I go to sketches, you can see I just made this sketch here and then extruded it out. So now we're just going to fill in the back. Okay, that's the back all filled in. That was as simple as creating a new sketch here and then creating a square and extending that out. So as you can see, now the back of this is all done. Now the next thing to do is I'm going to recess these parts back a little bit and put a little chamfer on so that when the drawer itself goes in, it should slide in nicely. Okay, that's the recess on both of them. All I did was do it on one side and then mirrored it to the other. So now when the drawer goes in, it won't get stuck on a flat face. It will be somewhat guided in to this part. Okay, and now the actual drawer itself. I've followed along with the new sketch against that back face, done this part, well, inset it a little bit, did that part, and then I've just extruded it out until it's just come into line with that, so that gives me some room to put the front face on. So let's get this out so we can work on it. Okay, that's it out, and I've put the front face on. Once again, I'm just doing a simple extra sketch and extruding that out, so now we'll have a front panel and it will look a lot nicer. So now we're just going to hollow this part out, I think, and there we go. And all I did for that was just use the shell function. So now we have a nice hollowed out drawer. So let's make sure this still fits in nicely. Yep, that's looking good. Obviously though, if I was to do it like this, there's no way I'm going to be able to take it out. So maybe a small little handle here. Okay, well that's all I need, but we'll try and make this look a little bit nicer. Okay, so that's the handle all done. All I did was fill it around here, shelled this part out, and then also just put a little chamfer on here to make it print a little bit nicer. But I feel like probably put some handles here and here. So let's just quickly add those. Okay, and the back handles are now done. So that should just give me an idea how I would be able to put on handles on the main toolbox. Obviously I've decided that I need to make sure to have a nice little approach angle here so that when it prints up the layers it's got a nice steady angle to work with. So yeah, let's get this sent off to the printer. Okay, so the first part has been printed out, the drawer. From initial feedback, the base is a little bit thin, so obviously I need to make that a little bit thicker. There's definitely been some stringification along these parts from this overhang, so that is definitely something I need to work on. However, from this, fits in perfectly with a little bit of a lip, but I feel like I was actually able to design something of a simple drawer. And the way I did that is I can show you, because I've discovered Fusion gives you a way to create drawings from your parts. So I feel like this is probably a little bit better than my sketches. So the way I've done this is we have two components, the container and the tray. So here and here. So the height of this is 49 millimeters, whereas the height of this part is 50. So there's a millimeter of tolerance between the two, and that's how it'll slide in a little bit better. It's the same with the rungs that it runs along. Those are designed to be 5 millimeters, whereas the cavity here is 6 millimeters. I've also got it so that the bottom of this rung here is at 25 millimeters, whereas the cavity here, the bottom of that, is at 24. So it doesn't scrape against the bottom and the weight will be rested on this part. But yeah, I feel like this has been a good initial design. So now on to part 2, which is the containment tray. So I'll be right back with that. Okay, so now we're on to the top tray. I've just started off with, once again, simple square, inset a bit and then extruded out that little part here. So now obviously my tray can rest down into this bit, but obviously I want to figure out a way of getting this front section to remove. I'll explain why in a minute. Okay, now that I've got that out, all I did was create a plane here and a plane here, and then just use the, what is it, the modify split face function. And the reason why I want that is because obviously when I print up this way, if I was to then have just this long face here, it's not going to like this long length here printing, and this is way smaller than what the actual length of the toolbox. So hopefully by doing this should make things a little bit simpler. Okay, so let's now try and design a little fillet here and here so that these can just slot in pretty easily. Okay, now that's all done. All I did was just add another rectangle onto here, attached it, extruded a copy down to cut through into this, and mirrored that across both sides, and then I just offset them a little bit inwards and this a little bit outwards so that there should be a small amount of clearance between the two. Let's just have a look. Okay, yep, they seem to be aligned quite nicely. And it's on both ends, so that's good. So now let's try and design just a test tray to go inside of this. Okay, so that's the test tray done. All I did was copy that part inside, inset it a little bit and extrude it up, and then just created some simplest shapes just to be as a visual aid as what this is going to be. This is just a test, there's no dimensions really, I just randomly put down some shapes. Let's move this down and see if it all fits. Yep, that all fits. I put a little chamfer on here just to make it look nicer. But yeah, let's get this off to the printer and that'll be the second part done. Okay, so once again, it's all printed out fairly well. Still a few things I need to improve on, that's definitely, but once again, this is what the entirety of this process is for. So we have the tray design, and of course I went with the split front, because if I want to print this like that, well, I want to print the top half of it like that so that I can actually do this. Then if I was to have that part be there, it's not going to like printing this overhang here. So I created a slot here, which should mean that I can then just push that in and it creates that top. Now, one thing I am also thinking about is that if I was to then put a little overhang along here, because I haven't done this in this part, but I might in the next. Put a little overhang along here, which could easily be printed because I'm printing this way. Then these can just slot in like that, and there's less risk of these then coming back out. However, I need to be careful about the size of these, because in testing, that tab there broke. But once again, this is why I'm prototyping, just so I can learn these mistakes. It's also apparent to me that the width of this internal cavity I put at 55. However, the width of this part is only at 54.95. So there's only 50 microns of size there, which has meant that it goes in pretty well, but it definitely bows it out because it's just not good enough for that. But once again, I've came out with a good proof of concept. So moving forwards, with those changes I've thought of, I believe this drawer is coming along fairly well. Okay, so I've just finished making the hinge. I'm not going to show you the process of it because I mostly just copied a video that I found that you can see here. I'll leave a link to it in the description. I was mostly just wanting to figure out how to have two parts print together without actually being attached. If I just go to the inspect and do the section analysis, and let me click the bottom. Yeah, I'll just do that. So as you can see, there's a nice little gap there, and really want, here's the process of it being made. So yeah, very simple. Catch the other video if you really want to know how to do that. But hopefully now that I know more or less what to do here, I can modify the methodology into what I need for my lid. So let's get this printed. Last but not least, the hinge. Now, full transparency, this is a design I copied from the internet, as I said. However, obviously, most of this is just using tips and tricks that I found online. So, but this one is a direct copy, but I feel that as long as I can just modify the design to fit my use case, this should be quite cool. But it is nice to be able to know that I can print hinges, and I can probably use this design in many other ways, just with a few different parameters. So obviously what it is we've got two parts, and there is a 0.4 millimeter gap here and here, and a 0.4 millimeter gap in the diameter of the two holes, so that it can print fine. And then when it printed, all I need to do is just give it a little bit of force to break the small connections, and now it goes along fine. So that is the hinge test all done, and the design for that is going to be, they are going to go on the back of the tray like that with the lid, and then should allow me to open and close fairly easily. Of course, I am coming to the design problem that obviously these will have to be printed as separate parts, because if I was to print the job like that, there's going to be massive cavities all the way along down. So I'm thinking with a top tray for this part, having a small recess along there and there, so that I can just put those in and glue them. So there will be some assembly, but I feel like that should solve the problem of the lid, because there are other ways to do it, but I would have to have the lid be the same height as this part, and I don't want a really massive lid. So that is now all three of the criteria done. And I believe now I am ready to move on to finalizing my design. So now the only thing left to do is to grab my ruler and start measuring out the final design. So thanks for watching again. Like, comment and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you next time when hopefully we'll be getting a first version of my toolbox done. Thank you.